And this Hangout on Air is live. Good morning. Welcome to the Friday Morning Hangout, sponsored by schoolofbookkeeping.com. I'm back from Israel in one piece.
Welcome back, Seth.
Talking about that a little bit before we went live there. So the technology is really the same. You almost don't realize after a while that you're in a foreign country in terms of the technology. I mean, they have everything we have, no question. The only difference is their plugs are a little different. So you got to get those like adapters because they're 220 volt.
Right.
So luckily my brother had a bunch of them, and in fact he had one with like a splitter. So it was funny because I had the splitter and then I had all kinds of stuff plugged in and split off, and then I have my own like portable surge protector. I love it. I'm going to show it to you because I don't know what I would do without this thing. It is, on the rare occasion I still go out to see a client, this is such a lifesaver right here. It's like a little mini surge protector, and it's even got USB ports on it, so you can charge your gadgets with it.
Nice.
Belkin. It's awesome. So, and I brought all my toys. I brought all my toys there with me. I had my laptop, I had my tablet, and of course my phone. I had to call Verizon and set up like a global calling plan for while I was there, so I didn't get charged ridiculous roaming rates.
Yeah, kidding.
It was funny because I haven't seen the word roaming on my phone since like when cell phones were brand new.
I wanted to ask you,
to see that roaming. What's that?
Did you plan this trip, or was it like a spur of the moment?
No. We actually, my parents had booked a flight back in December for me because we talked about doing it back then, and then I had to get a passport. So it was a funny story because my parents were on me about getting my. I thought I had one, I couldn't find it. So it was a question of do I need to renew it or do I need to actually just go apply for one. So, eventually after doing a little research, I found out what you do is you fill out both forms, one for the lost passport, another for, just the application as if you don't have one. And this way, one way or the other, they get you your, passport, whether it's a copy or a new one. And it took me a while to get to that. I was just because I'm so busy all the time. So it took me a while, and by the time I did it, just to be sure I'd have it. And then apparently, when you stay at a hotel in Israel and you're from another country, they need your passport number when they hold the room for you. So, and also they there's a little thing you get with the passport that because you're from outside, you don't pay their VAT tax on the hotel stay. So, so it's interesting that my initial thought was, I just need the passport by the time I'm getting on the plane, but you really need it a lot sooner than that. So, and then the reality is my sister-in-law said this to me while I was there, and she's absolutely right, that you should always have a valid passport. You just never know when you're going to have the need to get on a plane and get out of the country.
Very
right?
true. Right.
Especially if you're like me and you have family that lives in other parts of the world. So it's, kind of interesting. But, I thought about that and I said, she's 100% right. The weird thing is I have no idea what happened to my passport. Based on the documentation they sent back with my passport, it looks like it had in fact been renewed, and meaning that it has in fact, been lost. It's probably somewhere in this house. I just don't know where. The place where I normally had kept it for years, it wasn't there. And I just turned the house upside down looking for it. I couldn't find it. More than likely, it's like packed up in a box somewhere. That at the time, I'm sure I thought it was a sound place to put it.
Right.
Obviously, it wasn't. So now with the new one, I have to find a new place. I've got it right here in my drawer.
I'd put it in a bank deposit vault.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yep.
We have a metal lockbox in the freezer. I've come from a long line of firefighters, and they said the best place to keep your important papers is in the freezer. So we have a fireproof safe in the freezer.
Oh, that's funny.
Except my mother's refrigerator in the garage died one day, and when they delivered the new one and took the old one, about 3 hours later, she realized everything was it. We're talking deeds to the house, titles to the cars, Social Security cards, everything. And they found it, and well, actually, the company that took the salvage found it and had it for us, and they've been around for 100 years. And I sent him like flour. He wouldn't take any money. I sent him like flowers and everything, and he said some man just showed up and handed me a $100 bill, and I said, "What do you look like?" And it was my brother. I mean, the whole family was just like, So yeah, be careful with those the freezer trick.
So, Seth, how much were you able to unplug from the accounting world when you were there?
A lot, actually, and that's kind of what inspired me to do this topic that I chose for today, because I was very sort of proud of myself that I was able to unplug as much as I was, and thinking back, I realized things that I did almost unwittingly that I think were the reasons why I was able to do it. So, you guys ready? I've got my list up here on my other screen with I just put like bullet points for myself of what I did. It looks like right now I've got my top 8 tips for how to go on vacation without having to worry about what you're going to come back to. So the first tip, you guys ready for this?
Okay.
All right, so the first tip is block off your calendar well in advance. So when I booked that trip back in December, then I immediately went onto my calendar and went all the way out to last week, and I blocked the time off on my calendar, because I know myself. If I don't do that, what's going to happen is before I get the chance to block it off, somebody, you know how I have my appointment setting system, it's all online, somebody's going to grab a time on that day. And then I'm going to have to, deal with explaining to somebody, sorry, I made a mistake leaving that appointment open, I can't honor that time and day, and that's just annoying for the clients, right? But what I realized that it also did was it enabled me to see well in advance, every time I look at it, that it reminded me that I need to be prepared, and especially it makes a difference when you're going out of the country altogether. I almost had that as a perfectly good excuse to tell people, sorry, all bets are off. Mm-hmm. But having had that experience now, I would treat any vacation that I go, even if I'm going away for the weekend up into the mountains here in California, I would treat it the same way now, having had this experience. So blocking off the calendar well in advance, but there's something else. If you use Google Calendar, let's say, and you create like an all-day appointment, it doesn't really block your calendar off. First of all, Time Trade, which is what I use for appointment setting, doesn't recognize that time as being unavailable. So another trick there is don't use the all-day appointment feature, because the other problem with that is the all-day appointment feature shows up at the very top of your calendar as a little thing, and you don't notice it. I don't notice it. So what I've learned to do is actually manually go in on each day and create an appointment from as early as I need to, 4 a.m. until 9 p.m., and just call it away on vacation, right? And then I do that for each of the days that I'm going to be away, and then I'm going to get into this on tip number 5, but I add one day after the day I'm coming back, and that day gets included. It's as if I'm still out of the country as far as the rest of the world is concerned, right? So just that alone was the first thing that at a high level really helped me, because I got to see well in advance, and because it was blocked out on my calendar, every time I was looking in terms of scheduling what needed to be done and for whom, it was easy for me to see that either I could squeeze it in before I left, or it wasn't going to get touched until after I got back. And it reached a point where people are always trying to get on my calendar and get time with me for various purposes. And it got to the point a day or two before I was leaving where somebody wanted to get in something with me, and I'm in the habit of, because I'm a people pleaser, and I want to make people happy, so I'm always trying to squeeze people in and make accommodations as much as I can. And it reached the point where I actually was very honest with somebody, and I wrote back to them. I said, look, I think at this point, if I try and squeeze one more thing in, my head is going to explode. Now,
so I have a question about Google Calendar.
What?
I'm sorry, I have a question about Google Calendar.
Yeah.
Can't you mark yourself busy?
Well, you do that by creating an appointment.
Right,
so that's
but
how
it doesn't allow you to do that for the all-day event?
Not really. I mean, again, the all-day event just puts a marker at the very top of the day that shows it, because, what could happen in theory, and I suspect this is why it's set up this way, is I might have an all-day event like a conference that I'm going to, but within that I want to schedule appointments, right? So, case in point, if I'm at something like the Sleater Conference, or if I'm at QuickBooks Connect, I might want to create an all-day appointment that says, here's when I'm at QuickBooks Connect, but then within that I might want to schedule times that say, hey, at this time I'm going to meet with my friends at Avalara, and at this time I'm going to meet with my friends at QVinci, whatever it is. So, so in theory, yes, putting an all-day appointment on there, it puts the marker on there that sort of shows you, okay, I'm busy. But when you say available, not available, what do you mean exactly? Like available, not available from whose perspective?
Okay. Okay. I just, you know,
I just put it
I
down.
use the Google Calendar. I use the all-day event, and I do mark it as either available or busy. I guess it doesn't show really well just as a quick glance when you're looking at the schedule.
That's the point. Is it doesn't show really well. If I go in and I've got my calendar in here, up on my other screen right now. If I go in and I check off all day, I don't even. So I can mark it as busy.
Yes. Yes.
But I don't even. All right. So hold on a second. I'm just going to call this test. And while I'm doing this, I might as well share my screen so you can all see what I'm doing. So let's take a look at that.
Because I'm looking at it the same as you.
Okay, so here's like a test appointment, and I had planned on this, so I have my School of Bookkeeping calendar up, which I don't really use. My primary calendar is my Nerd Enterprises calendar, and I have them sort of shared with each other so that I can see. Actually, I have this one shared with my Nerd Enterprises, so when I'm on my real calendar, I can see anything that I might have put on the School of Bookkeeping calendar. So down here, I just checked it off as busy, and I can say save, and then so from a visual standpoint, it doesn't really do anything extra. I've still just got this, this appointment up here, which to me just visually doesn't work nearly as well as me saying, all right, let me go create an appointment here.
Right.
And blanking.
I'll create the event, and then here's what I do, just a little navigational trick. It just saves me the trouble of having to actually think about putting in the times. I can click and drag here and just extend the appointment down.
That's what I do.
Yeah, so this way, and then the other thing I'll do on something like this, because of the nature of what it is let's edit the event, and in Google Calendar, you can choose different colors. So like I like a nice bright red or something that really makes it stand out. Like, I'm really not available this day. So, little things like that. But this to me, especially when I'm like on the phone trying to make arrangements with people or whatever I'm doing, this really helps me from a visual standpoint because I can see, okay, this day's off limits, right? If I leave it up here, I may or may not notice it when I'm going 1,000 miles an hour trying to, sort of deal with everything. So that's why I prefer this option. This kind of shows up here, which if you also use the tasks, those will also show up when you assign a date to a task up in this same area. So, but again, it's like hidden to me, so it's not my ideal way to do it. Because to be honest, I don't even know what that did, marking it as busy. I mean, I suppose I can probably filter my calendar and show busy versus available, and that's probably serves the purpose when I'm sharing with others, right? So if I have this calendar shared with other people and they need to see when I'm available, I can create an all-day event and leave it as available so that they know that I'm available. I just have some kind of an all-day event going on. So, all right, Rhonda's asked me to add a task to see what it looks like. So do this now. So I'm all the way over here on the right, but then you click this little right arrow to get more options on the task, and then I'll set a due date of April 8th. And you can already see it's already showed up here. As soon as I assign a due date, it shows up in that same section as the all-day appointments do. And I used Google Tasks for a long time. It's actually really cool. It's a really cool, simple, like to-do list management system. Obviously, these days I use things that are much more robust, but sometimes I actually miss this.
I kind of use my calendar as a to-do, like for the different tax returns. I'll just schedule them at different times, and then if I miss the time, I can just drag it to some other time.
Yeah, I do the same thing. In fact, what I'll often do is I'll have a block of time on my calendar for, let's say, a time that I know I'm going to work on a particular client's stuff. And then I'll have the to-do items in, like Wunderlist I'm using a lot these days, and I still use Evernote very heavily. So then I'll know that when I see that block of time on my calendar, then I refer to the corresponding, to-do. Like in Evernote, when I'm using that, I'll have different notes. Each note might be its own to-do item because that way I can have a lot of detailed information in the note about what needs to be done and when and for whom and all that. And then what I'll do is I'll tag it follow-up and I'll tag it with the client's name. So then when I get to that block of time where I'm supposed to work on that client, I'll actually do a query in Evernote by tag of follow-up and that client's name. And I actually have those searches saved. So I have follow-up dash client name as a saved search for any client that I'm managing stuff for in Evernote. So
Can you sync Evernote and Google Calendar?
no.
So, no?
No, but what Evernote does is it gives you. It also has a reminder feature where you can add a reminder date and time, and because Evernote is a web-based app, it'll actually email you the reminder. You'll get a daily kind of digest in the morning of all the things that you asked to be reminded about for that day. But no, there's no direct sync between any calendar. So, again, and sometimes what I'll do, Dennis, like you, is, for example, if I have a day blocked off for production where I'm going to be just working on courses, I might, at this point, for example, want to have 2 courses that I'm working on at the same time. So if I don't schedule it that specifically, I might get kind of, I might dive into working on one course and spend the whole time on that one course. So I'll break my calendar appointments up and say, from 8 a.m. till 1 p.m. I'm going to work on this course, and from 2 p.m., because I'll take a break for lunch, until 6 p.m. I'll work on the other course. So I find it very helpful sometimes to turn your calendar into the to-do list. Bottom line, at the end of the day, I live and die by my calendar. If it's, ultimately, if it's going to get done, that's where it needs to be.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, it's nice. Plus, when you review it, like with I do tax returns, I can see, oh, I was working on so-and-so 2 days ago, but I haven't finished it, so that I can just drag it over to. And I kind of combine, like, smart sheets where I've, got prioritized things, and I've got it set up where I've got different stages of production, and I can see, which ones are out for review, which ones are, I can double check which ones I still are waiting stuff on,
Right.
So it's kind of a nice feature.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love Google Calendar, and all the calendars do all the same basic stuff. I just like Google especially because it lives in the cloud, so I have access to it anytime, anywhere. There's no sync that needs to be done. If I add an appointment to my calendar on my phone, as instantly as I've added that appointment, it's going to be up on my browser. There's no. I like not having a sync going on, but having everything kind of updated in real time like that.
Yeah.
So to me, that's one of the things I don't love about Evernote, because Evernote is a sync, right? And that's why I don't love Evernote. I know Joanne's going to cringe when she hears me say this, but I don't love Evernote for collaborative purposes because of the sync, and because of the sync, I wind up with conflicts. As soon as I start trying to collaborate with people in notebooks and Evernote, I get conflicts, and it drives me nuts.
I want to say I just tried the Google's new to-do list, and I'm ready to turn it off.
Really?
I don't think it does anything more than the task does, and you have to purchase it monthly to be able to add notes. I just don't know what good a to-do list is without notes.
And why would I want to pay for one when there's a million free solutions like Wunderlist and Evernote, and I can list you a whole bunch of others that
Right. This just recently came out this month. I'm not sure where the advantage is over the other ones, and I'm not sure I'll ever find out because I'm not going to pay for it.
Of all the things Google rolls out for free, they decide to charge for something that's way too accessible for free. That just doesn't make any sense. So that's interesting. All right, so my first 2 tips: block off your calendar well in advance. Don't use the all-day event. Use an actual appointment on the day and block off the whole day that way for each of the days. Tip number 3. Hire a VA, even if just for when you're away. For a while, I was looking for somebody, and I went out and I talked to a few different people, and I tried a series of different people, and they didn't work out. And finally, I remember Stacy Kildall swearing by the VA that she uses. And in case you're unsure, a VA is virtual assistant, right? So I asked Stacy to refer me the person that she uses, and she did, and that's working out beautifully. So I have a monthly arrangement now with this person, and it really helps me because even on or off vacation, it helps me with a lot of the little follow-up things that, like I get a lot of emails from people with questions where the response is simply going to be, hey, look, here's how you go sign up for a session, and then I can help you, right? So, but I was spending so much time writing those responses and going back and forth with people that I found it's much more effective, and it frees me up a lot to forward those emails to her, and then she knows I've gone over everything with her, of course, so she knows how to instruct them to, how to get on my calendar and get a session with me. So definitely hire a VA, and all it's a matter of doing is that in itself gave me so much peace of mind that I knew that. Then I set up an autoresponder, right, which is my next tip. That's tip number 4, and we all do that. I know that you don't really need me to tell you that, but I still wanted to point it out because sometimes it's helpful and important even to point out the obvious. So what I did was, of course, in my autoresponder, I said, if you need immediate assistance with anything, please email, and I gave her email address out. And of course, she has an email with nerdenterprises.com, so that it's all seemingly in one place. So that in itself took a huge load off of me because I knew that nobody was getting ignored, right? So going back to the very first question, I think Dennis, you asked me this, was about how do I make sure that, or was I able to really unplug while I was away? That's the reason I was substantially able to unplug, because I knew that everybody was at least getting a response of some sort right away, in addition to the autoresponder itself, letting them know, hey, Seth's out of town, and she's trained, so to speak, to help them with most of what they need. I mean, she's not going to answer accounting questions, but she doesn't need to. She needs to only know how to guide them into my calendar system so that they can sign up, pay for an appointment, and schedule it for when I get back. Or, I have Harold Mars, who does the trainings with me, who has been on our Hangout recently a few times, and he's wonderful. So I'm constantly reassuring people that, yes, it's not me, it's not the guy that you see in the video, but I wouldn't have him working with me if I didn't feel every bit as confident that he could do just as well. And I've never had a complaint. So
Seth, I have a dumb question.
Mm-hmm.
What else do you use your virtual assistant for? Okay, she's taking care of your emails.
Well, it goes beyond that, because then we have I have several different places where leads come in. So she's following up with a lot of the leads as they come in. I have a form on my website which is set up through Smartsheet. So that's shared with her, so that when somebody fills out the form, I don't even have to intervene. She goes on and responds to them and lets them know, how to get signed up for a session with me. If they have a question, so she acts as a filter, she'll come back to me and say, hey, they had a question about this, I don't know the answer, and then I can respond through her, but it still cuts down on a lot of my time by having her act as that filter. So she's handling all the kind of follow-ups with prospects, and it almost sounds like she's doing sales, but she's really not. She's just giving them the information they need that otherwise I'd be spending all of my time doing.
Does she have access to your calendar, or that other? You have an app, another way to do that?
Good question. So what I did there was I, again, used TimeTrade from my automated appointment setting system, right? So what I did just about 2 weeks ago was I use Google Apps for Business for my email and everything, right? So within Google Apps, you can create a group, which is basically a distribution list that you create in the format of an email. So I created a group called Appointments at nerdenterprises.com, and that's a distribution list that includes me and her, so that when somebody now signs up for an appointment, TimeTrade has that email address as my account email, which means that the appointment confirmations now get distributed to me and her, and then we have a process that, again, before I was doing it myself, now she's able to do it, where she goes in and takes that information and puts it into Active Collab, which is the project management system I use to keep track of all the one-on-one sessions and what sessions are upcoming and which ones have been completed, and then the notebooks where I put the notes during the session and after, and the links to the recordings that they get. All that is tracked and managed through there, so now she's handling the sort of initial upkeep, where when somebody makes an appointment, she goes and puts it in there. Again, one less little task that I have to worry about.
I have a question. Did you periodically monitor to make sure that things looked like they were working, like as far as things getting scheduled and that kind of stuff?
I'm constantly monitoring everything. I still get those emails on the distribution, and so even though I set it up, so that she would handle it, I didn't stop doing it myself until I saw her doing it.
Okay.
Right, and there was kind of a little transition period there where she had to get set up and and sort of opt into that distribution list. That's just how Google Groups works. And once she did, then she started getting the emails. And then actually, it was just recently that I saw that she went into Active Collab and posted the appointment confirmation for me. So once she did that, and she did it with 2 in one day, I was like, okay, she's got it now. But I'm still going to get those confirmations sent to me. I'm never going to, not be aware of that, because, this way, if she goes away or she takes a vacation, then I can manage it for that time. So that's to me very important. And I love using distribution lists for that purpose. So, it's something I'm also now doing where for clients that I have, for monthly bookkeeping clients, Jeff is here with us. Jeff is, what I refer to as my bookkeeping manager. So he's handling all of the monthly bookkeeping clients for me and doing all the work. And as we bring in other bookkeepers, he'll be overseeing their work. And what we're doing is we're creating a group, just like what I described for my appointments, for each client, so that any apps we use for a client, let's say I sign up a client with Bill.com, then I'm going to create a group in the form of that email address that says, client X at Bill.com. Or I'm sorry, client X at nerdenterprises.com, and that will be the email we use for that account at Bill.com, so that will redistribute to both Jeff and myself. This way, everybody's got their hands on what's going on if we need them. So it's little things like that I'm setting up. That now, going back to the today's topic, how do I deal with it when I'm away on vacation? These are the kinds of systems that I put in place that help me to feel a deep sense of comfort that things are being handled, and I don't have to be deeply entrenched in the day-to-day as much.
You take more vacations now.
Maybe, keep in mind, it's still, my presence still drives the revenue primarily for the business, so I still need to, I can't completely unplug from it. Oops, we lost Joanne. She got offended because I talked badly about Evernote. So, next tip. I already kind of touched on this. Plan one extra day back. Even though you're back, you're still on vacation. And then I'm getting more specific because this is what I did, and I found it really helped. Watch TV, order in, pamper yourself as much as you can. You deserve it. So you're getting a vacation from the vacation, and that's what I did. And the other thing is, I didn't write this on my actual tip, but unpack immediately. That's what I did, and it was a huge help because I got in from the airport, and believe me, I was exhausted. It was like the last thing I wanted to do, but I said, you know what? I'll be able to relax so much better if I do this. So I immediately first I spent time with my dogs, of course, because I hadn't seen them in a week. But then I unpacked my bag, I put everything away, and put away my luggage, so that the next thing I had, then I ran out, I went and got my mail, those kinds of administrative things. But I grabbed the pile of mail, and as much as I was tempted to start going through with it, I just stuck it in my drawer and said, I'll get back to it later. I'm not dealing with this yet. It's not yet. So eventually I got into my bed, I turned on the TV, I found a Criminal Minds marathon, and I was done. And then I went online to a service called LABites.com, which is like a delivery service where they'll go from selected restaurants in the area, and they'll deliver for you, even though the restaurant itself doesn't necessarily deliver, right? So I went on their website and I ordered some food. I had it delivered, and once that came, I was done. Doors were closed, locked. I was in my bedroom watching TV, enjoying a little meal, and just relaxing. And probably within about an hour or two of all that, I was completely passed out, and I fell deeply asleep. I didn't wake up until my wife came home from work. She had been trying to call me actually on her way home because she knew I was back. So she obviously was anxious to talk to me. Didn't even wake up. It was just, I slept straight through. I woke up to her coming into the house, and I was like, oh, hi. So it was the best thing I could have done, because believe me, normally the way I am, I would have come home and said, forget it, I have energy. I'm just going to sit at my desk and start getting caught up. And I would have gotten right into it, hit the ground running. And so I'm glad I didn't do that. To me, that was a really smart thing to do.
How long did the jet lag last? A couple days?
It didn't seem that bad the first day. I think the second day back was worse, which was yesterday. And then today, I feel like I'm kind of completely back. But again, getting the extra sleep helps with that, especially. Yeah. But even if jet lag wasn't an issue, such as if I just went somewhere somewhat locally, I'd still say do the same thing. It's a huge help. Because then what happened is, I planned the extra day, I got that rest. When I got back into things the next day, first of all, and this is my sixth tip, ease back in, right? The first day back should be light. There's a tendency, I think, to think, all right, and when I looked at my emails, believe me, I was freaking out because I looked at the total number of emails in my inbox, and it was like 700 emails. And I was like, so I look at that, I'm like, oh my God, normally I never let it get past like 200, before and I try and keep it below 200. Then once a week I have a whole process where I go through all the emails and I get my inbox completely cleaned out. And once that's happened, everything has either been filed away because I've already dealt with it, or it's in Evernote as a to-do item of some sort, right? Because that's essentially what my process is with the emails. So there's a tendency for me to want to go do that, and I had to sort of force myself to let go and unplug and say, no, I'm not going to do it. And I was glad, because then the first day back, the first thing I did was, and I've described this process before that I do, is I start by, again, using Google Apps. Gmail is the client, essentially, that you're using for your own domain with your email. I have this sort of reverse engineering process where I select all the unread messages. I run a query that says, show me everything that's unread. And then I go through it and I start unchecking the stuff I want to keep. So it's a fast way of getting rid of all the junk. So after going through all 700 emails using that process, by the time I was finished deleting everything that was garbage, basically, I got it down to like 300 emails. So I cut it by more than half, right, by just getting rid of the junk. And then I said, okay, that's not too bad. And then of the remaining unread, I just quickly glanced and said, is there anything that really needs my attention right now? And I was very, very discriminating about that, so that I was, really limiting what I was sort of willing to respond to at that stage. And I did. And then there's a few things, again, I forwarded to the virtual assistant. That's what I love about having her, is she's a tremendous help that way. And going back to your question, Gina, speaking of the virtual assistant in terms of what else she does for me, it's all those kind of follow-ups and keeping track. So I mentioned we use Active Collab to keep track of that stuff. Active Collab has a beautiful commenting system. So if there's something I need to know, she'll go in and comment on it. I get the email notifying me that she's commented, right? The link comes in, I can quickly click through, post a reply, and then move on. So it's just because when you're dealing directly with the client or the prospect, it's going to take more of your time, because they're going to have more questions. But when they know they're not dealing with the person who can directly answer their questions, they know they're kind of just limited to the basic information. How do I get signed up for a session? Otherwise, then you do, and then you start getting the accounting questions. Oh, well, can you just answer a quick question for me, right? How often do we get that?
How often is it quick?
Yeah, and it's never quick. It's it's before you know it, I've lost a half an hour just responding to one person, right? And that person may or may not become a paying client at some point. As much as I would love to just help the whole world for free, I can't do it. I'll lose my house.
I mean, 3 squares a day is kind of nice too.
Yeah, absolutely. So ease back in. First day should be light. Like I said, I was very discriminating even at that stage about what I would respond to. But I started going through the process of getting caught up. And another thing I realized, again, the tendency is to, in one block of time, I want to try and get all the emails caught up, right? When you have 700, that's just not realistic. It's not going to happen. But if I block off an hour a day, for about, like I said, in the first hour that I spent on it, I knocked out over half of them because most of it was junk, right? Of the remaining portion, I spent maybe another hour going through and just dealing with the things that really needed my immediate attention. And then the rest of it was either forwarded to the assistant or just left for, future follow-up. And my vacation responder was still on that first day back, right? On that day that I said you add in as an extra day. So anybody who was emailing me was still getting that notification that I'm on vacation, which means I set the expectation properly so that they're not expecting me to respond right away. But having that plan where I'd spend an hour or so a day getting caught up on the emails, by the time I get to this coming Sunday, it'll be a breeze to get through whatever remains at that point. Of course, still dealing with all the new stuff that's coming in each day. But by Sunday, I'll have my inbox cleared out. I'll have my process done like I described. So I think easing back in is important because it felt good to me to know I didn't feel pressured. I didn't feel stressed, and that's the key for me. And what I found was because I did that, because I unplugged, right, and because I didn't obsess about all the stuff I was going to have to do, I can see clearly that coming back I'm so much more effective. I'm so much more focused. I'm more sort of on the money with what I am spending my time doing because I'm refreshed, because I got recharged. If I'd spent the whole vacation stressing and obsessing and on the plane answering emails, somebody had emailed me earlier the other day saying that, I think it was Billy Ann actually said that that's what she tends to do. If I had done that, I wouldn't feel rested, right? And the whole idea of doing stuff like this is balancing your life properly so that when you do come back, you come back rested, you come back refreshed, recharged, and you're that much more effective. I used to sort of live under the illusion that all the extra time I can put in means I'm getting that much more done and means I can make that much more money, right? And it's BS. It's an illusion, because what I'm learning, and I'm still teaching it to myself every day practically, is if I set limits and say, you know what, by 5, 6 o'clock I'm done for the day. Keep in mind I start 4 or 5 in the morning. So that's still an 11-hour day, 12-hour day. Believe it or not, it's very easy if I don't force myself for me to go, 15, 16, 18-hour days I've even done in some cases, just because I wanted to keep going. But what I'm finding is that when I force myself to stop at a certain time, and going back to the calendar, I actually have an appointment on my calendar at 6 p.m. every day that says done. And it's a recurring appointment Monday through Friday. And that's my reminder right on my calendar that I need to stop so I can be properly balanced. And what I'm finding is when I stick with that, I'm that much more effective during the times that I am working, the times that I am on, so that I actually believe now that I'm getting much more done in less time because I'm balanced and because I feel I have that much more energy and I have that much more focus. When I'm tired, my focus is terrible. I'm so easily distracted when I'm tired. I've noticed this. And really actually stopping and paying attention to your own reactions and how your body and your mind react to things makes a big difference to me, just paying attention to it. Because I've learned a lot by doing that.
I find that I'm much better off by stopping when I'm tired and then just starting up the next day, because I'm a lot more effective than, the diminishing returns really sets in when you get tired.
Yeah. It's funny, somebody asked me before I left what I'd be reading on the plane, and I started reading this book called Emotional Intelligence 2.0. And one of the things it says right in the beginning of the book is, just very obvious guidance, but it's the kind of thing we all tend to overlook. And it's very straightforward, simple advice. If you're tired, sleep. If you're hungry, eat. I mean, very, very simple stuff, but sometimes stuff that's that simple that we overlook, right? And it's really important.
Yeah, your body will tell you.
It's so important for good balance. So that when you actually give yourself the opportunity to unplug and recharge. And also what I noticed is it's important for me to know that my whole life isn't about the work that I'm doing. So the very act of taking the downtime and, let's say, going to the gym and working out, in and of itself is my reminder that I'm not a slave to my work, that I have the freedom to do these other things, and that life is really more about these other things. The work is something I do. Hopefully I love what I'm doing, right? Because my opinion has been for a long time, if you don't absolutely love what you get up to go do every day, then you should start looking to do something different. But in terms of just knowing that I give myself the choice and the freedom to go do other things besides work at certain times during the day, is very freeing. It gives me a very good feeling that I'm not just living to work. And so that's for that reason, among all the obvious ones, that's important to me. So ease back in. The first day back should be light. And then tip number 7, plan a day several days after your return for when you'll catch up on emails, etc. So like in my case here, like I said, I said I'll do an hour or so a day at the beginning or the end of each day. I'll go through some of the emails, and I go into it knowing that I have the expectation that I'm not going to get it all done, because otherwise I'll try to, and then I'll stress myself out. And then my day that I plan on, really finalizing all the catch-up is Sunday. So just knowing that I have the time set aside to do that, again, gives me a lot of peace of mind and takes the stress off and enables me to unplug. That's the key right there, I think, to all of this, is knowing that I've got the time set aside to do it. I had written a blog post about, how we kind of learn things, right? And talking about how a lot of times people are going on the web and searching for information on how to do something, and it's almost like they're under duress, right? Because you're trying to work on something and you get stuck and you don't know how to do it, so now you're frantically searching. And I had put the suggestion out there that what if I knew that every day I had a 2-hour block of time in my schedule, on my calendar, that says reading and learning time? And so that I know every day I have the time set aside so that if and when I need to go learn something, that's the time to do it. Just knowing that that time block is there gives me a lot of peace of mind, so that if I get stuck on something, if it's practical to do, I can put that aside, move on to something else, knowing that during that reading and learning time block that I have, I can devote that time for that purpose, and then I can, and then I can get that task completed, either as part of that learning process or the next day, now that I've learned what I need to do. Sarah says, I love that suggestion. Which one was that?
I actually do that with your course stuff. I schedule myself time where I'm doing it at the end of the day or like right before I know something's due. Then I schedule the day before, and I use that as my coursework time. So.
See, I think that's brilliant. I think that's the best way to do it, because it's kind of like if you're in school, and that's why we have the tagline we use a lot, like always be learning, right?
Yeah.
You should always be learning. So if I have the time set aside, then that means I'm incorporating that sort of philosophy into my life. And if I have the time set aside, I don't have to stress about it, because I know I've got it set aside, and I know during that time I can go learn whatever I plan to, or I can learn something I didn't plan to that I've just discovered I need to, right?
Well, sometimes I redo your coursework where it's in the background, and I'm like listening to it so I can remember the suggestions, so it kind of gets in my little brain faster.
That's interesting. I got to be honest, it's surreal hearing like you talk about me that way. It's funny to me.
I know. Your voice is very.
You actually listen to me.
I know. I do actually, especially when I'm doing my cash flow projection worksheet that I need help with. But yeah, I like
That's
it.
awesome. So I'm just going up the chat here now. Jeffrey posted a question about suggestions for hiring a VA. So I mentioned earlier when I was talking about that I had problems finding somebody that was reliable. I went through people who, and I'll be very honest, I was trying to cut costs. I was afraid of having to spend a fortune on it. So I started out by getting people who didn't do this for a living and asking them, hey, you want to make some extra money? I can use some help virtually. All you need is a computer and an internet connection. I can train you on what you need to do, right? And frankly, all of them flaked. I even had an old high school friend come to me and say, hey, this would be perfect for my wife. And I started working with her, and I went through the process, and within like 2 weeks, she just completely flaked on me. And didn't even tell me she was like not going to do it until I pressed and said, hey, I haven't heard back from you. Do you have the time to do this? I had to really press her to get her to finally come back and say, hey, I'm sorry, I can't. It's too overwhelming, whatever it was. So when I finally I realized, okay, you know what? It's like anything else. You got to spend a little money to get the results. And the money I'm spending is saving me money. And so in my mind, the way I wrapped my head around what it was going to cost me was as follows. And I'll give you a perfect example, a case study. So just before I went away to Israel last week, I had a client who's been a client. I've worked with this person before, and they wanted me. One of the services that I offer through Nerd Enterprises is to do a video review of somebody's QuickBooks file, right? So without them there, they'll give me a backup of their QB desktop file, or they'll set me up as a user in their QBO, and I'll record a video of myself going through their balance sheet and P&L and make comments, and I'll run reports and save the reports. And so I deliver them a video that they can watch that I've done specifically about their company file. And, again, deliver any reports that I've made comments about in the video, and I'll write up comments and so on. So they get a good detailed, review, almost like an internal audit style review of their books done by me, and they have the video. So this person came and wanted that done. But I've been so busy that without the virtual assistant, I probably would have blown her off and lost the business. I charged $500 for that service. So when I had the VA that I use work on that for me, and by work on that I just mean follow up with the client and let her know, hey, Seth is going on vacation, out on vacation, whatever, but if you need this done, here's how it works. And again, her asking me the questions is going to be very quick, because she's just going to ask me the pointed question that she needs the answer to, so that she can then go handhold the client or the prospect. So ultimately the sale was made, right? The client paid the $500. And I made the arrangements to have them upload the file to me and so on. So that $500 that the VA helped me earn more than pays for my monthly cost with the VA. that's one sale, right? So to the extent that the VA is helping me bring in business that otherwise I would have to forgo because I don't really have the time to follow up on everything that's coming in anymore, then it pays for itself, and then some. And that's how I justified it. So going back to Jeff's question, suggestions, get a referral from somebody who can give you a good referral and assure you that this person is top-notch. And I can check with, the one that I'm using, if any of you are interested, and just see if she has the time, then I'd be more than happy to refer her to you guys, if any of you want that. I think it's very well worthwhile. And you know what? I eased into it. At first, she has different plans, kind of like I do with my bookkeeping services now, where I have different flat monthly plans. And so I started out with the lowest plan, and then as things ramped up and I gave her more to do, she said, hey, we're going over on the hours because the plan is meant to cover up to a certain number of hours. And she said, do you want to go up to the next plan? I said, at that point, I have so much confidence in her, and I'm so happy with how she's helping me that I didn't even think about it. I just replied saying, absolutely, I'm giving her pretty much carte blanche, like do whatever you need to do and charge me for it because it's working. So otherwise, if you Google VA, or I went out on Twitter at one point and I had somebody who's, I guess, a well-known VA on the internet who her own time was maxed out, but she went out there to her community of VAs and got a whole bunch of people for me. But at that time, I was still trying to play around with, again, using somebody who really doesn't do that for a living and trying to, force it on them, so to speak. So, lesson learned there. When you want to hire somebody to do a job, hire somebody who actually does that for a living.
Well, if you have to be super organized, your virtual assistant has to be even more organized. She has to live in her calendar even more than you do.
You know what I noticed that I believe she does? First of all, you're right. You have to be super organized, but you have to be that way anyway to run a business, in my opinion. But also, I've got the system set up that I think it almost cuts down on the need to be terribly organized from her perspective, because anything she needs to do, she's going to get notified about via email. So she's going to get an email that somebody's made an appointment, and then she'll go get that email and deal with it. She'll get notified when somebody fills out my contact form on my website, and then she goes and clicks through and logs in and deals with it. And what I notice she does, and I can tell, it's very clear to me because I see when she's following up on things, that she has a certain time every day blocked off, that's when she follows up on my stuff.
And I would imagine you would have to
she'll
keep
turn
that
things around
schedule.
within 24 hours. Sorry?
I would imagine it would have to be that way if you have several clients that you're tracking and doing that kind of thing. Because if you've got a huge invoice or inbox, imagine hers with all those notifications.
Right. So yeah, like I said, it's very clear to me that that's what she does. I can tell because it's always around the same time every day in the morning where it's clear that she's following up on my stuff. And she goes through whatever's come in the last 24 hours, follows up on it, and then she's done till the next day. So I'm sure she has her time organized that way. She probably has a block of time set aside on her calendar for each client. I mean, I do the same thing with my bookkeeping and accounting clients, right? So again, it goes back to the calendar. You got to live by the calendar. So, all right, jumping over into the Hangout page, Mariette is commenting. She says, listening in, oh my God, 700 emails, how fun. I love the outsourced virtual assistant topic. We should talk about the benefits of outsourcing work we shouldn't be doing to stay productive. And so again, that goes back to exactly what I said, and I broke it down literally in the dollars and cents. If I'm paying her a few $100s a month, and that few $100s I'm spending with her is helping me to generate $1,000 a month, guess what, guys? It's worth it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we're accountants. It's not easy. It's not difficult for us to connect those dots. So that's right. Seth is feeling in awe of students listening to him. Yes, we schedule you into our days. My God, I'm so sorry. All right, so what's left? Okay, so this is going to be the fun one. So, because the last tip was 7, how to plan a day several days after you return, or plan a day several days after you return for when you'll do the final catch-up. So give yourself 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 days after the day you return and say, on this day, during these hours, whatever catch-up remains to be done, that's when I'm going to get the rest of it done, right? And I like using a day like a Sunday for something like that, or a Saturday, might work for you. Just depends. But point being, a day that's not a normal business day, because that's when I won't have too much new stuff coming in during that time. And that's part of my normal weekly process, is that every Sunday is the day that I have time set aside early in the mornings to get caught up. And I'm an early riser, so I can get up early on a Sunday morning just like I would on a weekday. I'll get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning if I need to, get everything caught up, and I can do that and update my week's worth of my own accounting stuff and everything else I need to do and still be done by 9 a.m. so I can go spend the day with my wife and do something. So my last tip so far on this is, so how to handle the ideas that pop into your mind while you're away, right? If you're like me, then you have a mind that's constantly obsessed on different things that you want to do, or you're glancing at the emails as they're coming in and you're thinking, oh, that's an important one. I've got to make sure I remember to follow up on that, right? So I'll give you 2 options for tools you can use. One is going to be Evernote, and the other one is going to be Wunderlist, right? So that's the beauty. The beauty of both of those applications is I've got it right here on my phone. So any fleeting thought I get is that I'm going to pull up. I can do either Evernote or Wunderlist. Either one will work. Wunderlist, if you haven't seen it, I've done a couple of videos on it. You can I would create a list and call it my vacation list. Now, it's not a vacation list in terms of like things that I need to pack for vacation. It's a vacation list in terms of ideas, thoughts, things that I had that popped up in my mind while I was away, but I want to make sure I can stay unplugged so I can really relax and enjoy. And one way that I found that's very effective in doing that is having a way that I can purge these thoughts, get them out of my head and get them down somewhere where I no longer have to worry, because I know it's in a place where I know where to go find it later when I'm ready to deal with it. And I do that at night sometimes. If I wake up in the middle of the night, my gears are grinding. I've got all kinds of things running through my head. I'll pull up an Evernote note and just create a new note and just start writing whatever thoughts there are in my head. And what I'll notice is eventually my thought process will slow down, and then I know when I'm there I can get back to sleep again. These are things you deal with when you suffer from insomnia because you have such an overactive mind like I do. But I think these tips can probably benefit others as well. So Wunderlist or Evernote. And there's many others. If you're using something like Asana, that would work too. But the bottom line is have an app that's accessible on any mobile device where you can, in 2 seconds, pull something up and make a note about whatever it is that you want to get back to later. Looking back up on the chat, Sarah, yes, you're correct. IFTTT is the one with the recipes. It stands for if this, then that. And Jeff gave you the link there in the chat. Oh, and Joanne said, I don't really collaborate with my Evernote, so I don't have those syncing issues. So, and that was my point exactly. I use Evernote extensively, but not for collaborating. If I need to collaborate, what Jeff and I use for collaborating on client to-dos is Wunderlist. And Wunderlist recently introduced the ability to create like folders. So you can put lists inside folders. So that's perfect, because now I have a client folder, and within that, I have a list for each client. And it's singular, so however I'm organizing it doesn't interfere with how Jeff has it organized. Sorry, Gina?
I was just repeating Jeff's statement. Wunderlist is wonderful.
Yep.
It sure is. It's with the Wonder with the U? Or
yeah, Wonder with a U.
Okay.
So, and I'm based on what Jeff and I have been developing together, building a bookkeeping service through Nerd Enterprises. We have a management document where we've outlined exactly which tools we're using and for which purpose. And based on that, that's one of the courses I'm currently working on that's going to be a private course for students only, where I'm going to give people the lay of the land and the outline for how we're handling and managing our bookkeeping clients and how we're growing our practice and how we're using the different apps that we're using in order to make all this happen and systematize things and automate things as much as possible so that we can really take advantage of the whole value pricing model. And we are doing value pricing, and I'll tell you one of the secrets where I think a lot of us get into fear about value pricing because we say, oh my God, I'm going to charge a flat rate, but then I've got to pay people by the hour, and what if it costs me more by the hour that I'm paying than I'm charging the client, right? I'm going to lose my shirt. So there's a simple answer to that solution. One, you've got to price things properly, of course. You know, with value pricing, you got to aim high, and again, when we're talking about pricing based on the value, we're talking about pricing high because what you're doing for people is valuable. But the other trick is, and I got this idea because I went into a forum and I was struggling with the same question many of us do. What if the hourly that I'm paying to get the work done exceeds what I'm charging? Well, there's a simple answer to that. Work out an arrangement where it's based on a percentage of revenue. So I'm getting X number of dollars that I'm charging the client per month, and I'm going to pay you a percentage of that to do the work for me. And then I'll work with you and we'll work together to get the work done. Now all of a sudden that problem's solved because I have the same predictability that I'm giving my client. In other words, it's value pricing on both sides. So I'm going to be talking about that in great depth in an upcoming course that I've already started writing and recording content for. And it's basically about the ABCs of building and growing an accounting or bookkeeping practice in the cloud in today's world. I think I saw an updated comment come in from Mariette. Oh, she posted the link to Wunderlist, so that's now in the Hangout page if you want to check that out. So, those are my tips so far on how to recover from your vacation, or maybe it would have been better to title it something like "How to Come Back from Your Vacation Stress-Free." Because I have to be honest, I'm really not stressed out at all. I've taken shorter trips to Florida to see my parents where I'm only out a day or two and come back much more stressed out than I've come back after being out for a full week and being in another country where I really did have limited access, because even if I had access to my gadgets and technology, they're 10 hours ahead of us. So, you know, the time zone difference makes it that much more challenging because I'm sleeping when many people here are up and doing their thing.
Or eating when your hangout should be.
What's that?
Or eating when your hangout should be. Wasn't it like 5 o'clock our time?
It was 6 p.m. So, another good tip. This is not necessarily going to cut down on your stress when you're on vacation or anything like that, but on my smartphone here, I have these widgets with, hold on, things are popping up on my phone making it difficult to show you. I'll hold it at an angle so the light doesn't glare on this, but I have Jerusalem, London, Sydney, and Tehran, Iran, because that's where my wife is originally from. So I have those 4 cities, major cities, and what time it is there at all times. When I went to Jerusalem, I changed the Jerusalem one out for Los Angeles. So these are cities where I have people that are dear to me living, and so I have the widgets on my phone, so at any time I need to know, I can look at and see, I can tell what time it is there. So before I send an email or call them.
At 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. So when it came to doing the Hangout last Friday, I could have potentially done it. I had, again, the technology available to me to do it, but it was going to be 6 p.m. Israel time, is 8 a.m. here, and to be honest, when it came down to it, I just said, you know what? Again, it goes back to, why am I away on vacation? This is my time with my family in a country halfway across the world. I can skip 1 week's Hangout.
Absolutely.
So that's what it came down to. But I got to say, of all the tips I've mentioned here, I think having the virtual assistant is probably the most important one. That is what takes the biggest load off. And again, I'm going to go back once again to Gina's question about what other things she's doing. You know, the answer is I can offload just about anything to her. That's the beauty of it. Is, you know, and what I'll do is I recently, when it came to the appointment thing, I emailed her and said, hey, do you think you have time to take one more thing off my plate? And she said, well, it depends what it is, how much time it takes, of course. So I said, you know what, let's get online for 15 minutes or a half an hour, and I'll walk you through, you know, what I'm thinking of having you take on for me. And then I said, and then you can tell me if it's something you can take on or not. By the time we were done, she said, sure, this is easy. I can do it, no problem. And then again, it was a matter of thinking through, all right, what's going to be the system I'm going to create here? Because I still wanted to make sure that I see the appointments coming in, and at the same time I wanted to make sure that she has what she needs, because I don't want her to have to be too organized. I don't want her to have to proactively go look for something, right? So I set up that distribution list so that way she gets, and I don't want to have to intervene myself and every time forward an email to her whenever somebody makes an appointment. So it was nice for me to be able to just set up that distribution, and now I know she's going to get the email. I don't have to do a thing. All I have to do is watch the appointment confirmation come in, and within 24 hours see the notification from Active Collab that shows me that she's created the task and assigned it to me. And then when Harold does the sessions, he takes care of his own. He has his own time trade calendar, so he gets his own confirmations, and he still is shared in the same active collab environment. And within that we have categories for tasks, upcoming sessions for Harold and upcoming sessions for me. So I can see very clearly which ones Harold's got, which ones I've got. And again, so that's where I feel like email still has a very good purpose, is in getting what I like to call throwaway emails, right? It's those notifications. I don't have to keep the email. I just need to get the email so I know there's something that's been either done or something I need to do. And it's going to have a link on it that I click over to deal with it, and then I can delete that email, right? There's no reason for me to save an email letting me know that a task has been created in Active Collab. The appointment confirmation emails I do keep. I file those permanently because every once in a while I get somebody telling me, hey, I made an appointment and it wasn't on my calendar. And every single time that's happened, it's turned out that they didn't complete the process. And sure enough, when I say, hey, can you send me your confirmation so I can troubleshoot this and figure out, why it didn't end up on my calendar, what I'm really doing is, in a polite way, saying, hey, you didn't schedule the appointment properly, you knucklehead. And but usually when I do that, it forces them to stop and think and say, come to think of it, I didn't get a confirmation. And then I can say, well, that's because you didn't complete the process. You didn't actually make the appointment. So most people have no trouble with it, but like I said, every once in a while. So those emails I save because this way it's kind of like my proof of what I got versus what I didn't get. And since I know I save every single one, then I know that when somebody says, if something's not there, it means I never got it. It means it never happened. So little things like that, little systems. My goal is to create the systems that will make it so that I never have to remember anything in the perfect world. Right? That everything will just remind me, notify me, whatever I need to get, when I need to get it. It just happens. That's the kind of system I'm trying to build around building a bookkeeping and accounting practice so that I can best service my clients. I hate deadlines. I never want to forget deadlines, and I hate the stress of, oh my God, it's due tomorrow. The sales tax return is due tomorrow. Oh my God, I've got to get it done. I don't ever want to be stressed about things like that. So that's why it's important to me to set up those systems where things are so ridiculously organized that I've got things well taken care of well in advance. So there's, it minimizes. I'm not going to say we're ever going to reach a place where there's never that kind of stress. Things are going to happen, things are going to come up, but I'm doing everything I can every day to minimize that stuff and to eliminate it. And when it really gets troublesome, I just give it to Jeff, and he does it. Now, I noticed a couple of other questions. Do I sync my Outlook with Google? No. Once I started using Google, Jeff writes, ouch. Once I started using Google, I no longer had any need for Outlook because I moved everything to Google Apps. So Google handles my email, Google handles my calendar, Google handles my contacts. It's all beautifully integrated. It's on the web. It's on my phone in real time. I am doing everything in my power to not have to do a sync of any kind with anything. As soon as I see that something has to sync, I'm looking for an alternative solution. I would much rather have something that exists and lives and works solely in the cloud. That, to me, is where I'd rather be. Because as soon as I have a sync, it means I have the chance for conflicts and problems. One of the things I love is that while I was away and on the plane, and El Al doesn't have Wi-Fi on the plane, I was able to work offline in my Google Docs. Right? I was actually writing that course that I described that I'm talking about. And in Google Docs, I was able to work offline, and then the next time I had an internet connection, then it synced up. So that's kind of a sync. But it's not a true sync because most of the time in Google Docs, when you're working in there, you're working directly on the web. It just gives you that option so that in the rare situation for me, when I don't have access to an internet connection, I can still get things done and know that it's going to sync up when I get there. But what drives me crazy is having conflicts. I don't ever want to have conflicts because of a syncing issue. That's why we all love QBox better than Dropbox, right, Sarah?
That's right.
QBox actually is how I end my day. You say, Seth, that you have a notice on the bottom of your Google Calendar. Well, I get a little thing that pops up and it tells me when my clients are logging off their QuickBooks and QBox is syncing. So that's when I end my day.
I can see everybody going home.
You can see when they're going home.
That's great. That's great. And Rhonda says I'm firing Outlook. Good for you, Rhonda. Now, I hate Outlook. It's just such a clunky, unstable program. I'm sure it's gotten better over the years, but the fact is Outlook is creating a local data file. It's called a PST file. It ends in .pst, which means all that data is coming down locally on your computer, taking up space, and creating more chances for corruption and problems of all sorts. So that's what I love about moving all that stuff to Google, because it's handled in the cloud, it's handled seamlessly in the background, and I never have to worry about a thing with that. So Billy says, I can't wait for that ABCs course, and I love it. It's actually, I came up with what I thought was a really clever title for it. Hang on, I'll look it up, and then we'll end on this note because our time's up. And then I want to hear from Gina about what we're talking about later this afternoon. But just bear with me 1 second here. It's called Accounting and Bookkeeping Cloud Practice Management, the ABCs. Hold on, so Accounting and Bookkeeping Cloud, right, ABC? I purposely named it that way. Accounting and Bookkeeping Cloud Practice Management, and then I have a tagline here, the ABCs of starting and growing an accounting or bookkeeping practice in today's world. So that's a course I'm working on, which I hope to have out shortly. In fact, later today and over the weekend, I've written like the first 3 lessons. Now I have to record the videos.
Awesome.
And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So, Gina, what's going on today? Open season, or do you have a topic or a guest?
Well, it's open season. However, I'd like to share a couple experiences that I had this week with potential clients or people contacting me various ways. It's the last Friday before taxes are due on the 15th. I just wanted to ask our tax people where they're at, how they're doing. That's it.
I'm filing my extension while you're talking.
Pardon me?
I'm filing my extension while you were talking. I'm like, oh look, I can do this online. We're like the cobbler. What is it? The cobbler's children, or the cobbler's wife.
Who get no shoes?
Yeah, we get no shoes. It's like, so have you done your tax return? Oh, silly question.
Dennis knew he was going to be late. He filed his a month ago.
Oh, really? I just realized I better do it before I forget. I take care of everybody else, and then I'm always, running around at the last second with myself. So.
Hey, Seth, I have a question for you after the Hangout. I just want to ask really quick about T-Sheets.
Okay, sure.
Right.
Sure, and Mariette commented, do I send emails from Outlook or Gmail Web? How did you sync your G contacts with Outlook? So, again, I don't do anything with Outlook. I haven't even installed Outlook on any computer of mine in probably 5 years now. When the time came for me to make the switch, then I exported all my contacts to a CSV file, and then I imported that CSV file right into Google Contacts. And the emails, I kind of ran both simultaneously for a while just to make sure, because it's a bit of a difference in terms of how your email functions in the Gmail client versus what you've gotten used to with Outlook. With Outlook, you create folders and you can file emails in folders. With Gmail, it's labels. And the cool thing about that is I can have the same email tagged with multiple labels depending on how I might be looking for it later. That's often useful. In Outlook, to accomplish that, you'd have to make a copy of an email and put it in 2 different places, but then it's 2 sort of distinct entities when you're doing it that way. So again, very clunky in Outlook. What?
That's one of the reasons I'm stuck with Outlook right now is I have so many rules set up, and all of us do, that LinkedIn goes into LinkedIn, low priority goes into low priority, and then I've got it all tweaked. So I don't know.
Right. And well, yeah, I mean, and sometimes the good news is by creating the new system and starting over, it kind of helps you clean up. Yes, it's a lot of work up front because you got to restart with all those new rules, but I find that over time I get like old rules that don't apply anymore, and
right. And that rule thing is hard to clean up. I'm about to get an iPhone, and
right.
Which my iPad will be happy with, but my contact list is such a nightmare. And maybe this is the time to do it. Is try to find one contact list, or make it's just one of those chores that you just keep putting off. And once I have the contact list, maybe that's the time to dump Outlook. I don't know. I've got employees that use it for their scheduling. They have it just multicolored, and they came up with their own system. So I get a couple that start to panic when I talk about it. Or if I need to look up an email from 10 years ago, I've got it.
Yeah, but you can do that same thing with Google, Sarah, with your employees.
Right. It's just
doing it.
Jumping.
Yeah, it's just getting it set up and taking the time.
Maybe this summer when, we have nothing to do.
So Mariette asks, when do productivity apps become non-productive? And, I can't answer that question specifically, but what I will say is this. One of the things that I did that I think in retrospect now that I have the hindsight, was very smart, was I mentioned earlier that Jeff and I have this management doc. And in that document, we're outlining the different apps that we're using and for what purpose. That avoids overlap, right? Using two different apps for the same thing. And it helps, I think, prevent from getting to that place where it becomes non-productive. I'll share one thing. Because I'm in the habit of playing around with a lot of different things, I will sometimes intentionally take myself in different directions and spread myself a bit thin on this stuff. So one of my follow-up items that I have in Evernote that I need to do is I have a note to myself to go through Wunderlist, Active Collab, and Evernote and do some consolidating, because those are the three apps that I use for different sort of types of to-do lists. And now I find I am spread a bit too thin amongst them, so I have to, kind of redefine what the specific distinction is from why I would use one versus the other. And once I've made that definition, it might even include eliminating one of them, although I doubt it because I already know the different purposes. But then based on that definition, I have to clean things up a little bit. and you know what? So here's the answer to the question for Mariette. It's kind of a loose gauge, but when it becomes non-productive is when I start having trouble figuring out where to go to find that item that I had set up for myself. If I go to look for it where I expect to find it and it's not there, then that's when it's starting to become a problem, right? Because my rule about this stuff is the whole idea of it is being able to reference things when I need them very quickly. If I can't find what I need to find in 30 seconds or less, then something's wrong and that needs to be fixed. So that's the best answer I could give. It becomes non-productive when I have trouble finding where that item was that I had bookmarked or made a note about. If I can't find something quickly, then that's when it's becoming non-productive. So I will see you all, or you will see you all, at Gina's Hangout this afternoon, 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern. As always, I hope you guys found this helpful and useful and had some fun along the way. And we'll see you later on.
All right. Have a nice weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And Sarah, do you want to stay on the line here?
Yeah,
while I go off?
if that's okay. So
Let me stop the broadcast.